Good morning. I want to talk about a final metaphor or metaphors. Really, it's two metaphors that merge in the same text, and they really are communicating the same concept. And so I want to look at that passage with you this morning. It is 1 Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 5. What then is Apollos, and what is Paul? Servants through whom you believed, as the Lord assigned to each. I planted, Paul says, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. The people seem to be arguing and factioning off in Corinth, and some were saying, I follow Paul, and others, I follow Apollos. And he's saying, why are you factioning off? We're both in this to see Christ formed in you. So he says, he who plants and he who waters are one, and each will receive his wages according to his labor, for we are God's fellow workers. And here are the metaphors. You, at the end of verse 9, you are God's field, God's building. Then in verse 10, he picks up on the idea of building. So he's talked about watering and planting, and clearly he's saying the church is like God's field, and these apostles came, and these leaders came, and they tilled the soil of God's field and did the work of God and planted the seeds of the gospel in that field and watched it blossom there, forming the church. And he says, you're God's field, you're God's building. So now he runs with the idea of building. According to the grace of God given to me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation and someone else is building upon it. Let each one take care how he builds upon it, for no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Verse 11. So 1 Corinthians 3, 5 through 11. And we learn something here. The church is God's project, whether we want to call it a field or we want to call it a building. It's God's project. And God equips people, leaders, teachers, shepherds, missionaries. Here it's apostles, sent, who do the work of God to till the soil, to cultivate it, to plant the seeds of gospel, and then to water them and nurture them and watch them grow. And the point in verse 11 that's very poignant for us is there's no other foundation. There's no other basis that we operate on, Paul says, other than Jesus. It starts with him. So therefore, what we want to be about as the church is we want to be about recognizing that as we're taught, as people pour into the life of the church and leadership, we want to receive them, but we want to receive them as they are giving us Christ. And Christ forms the basis because we are God's field. We're not made for tares to grow up in, to use one of Jesus' parables. We're made for wheat to grow up in. We're made for good produce to come from. We're God's building. We're made to be solid, built on the foundation that is Jesus Christ. So take seriously both how you contribute to God's field and God's building, and take seriously what you let in to our local church by way of teaching, because in cultivation and shepherding, because we want to be people that are a field on the one hand and a building on the other that honor God by the fruit we bear and the strength of our structure. May the Lord bless you today.